I am June Merritt, 32 years old. I used to believe that if I stayed quiet, useful, and never in the way, there would always be a place for me in the family. But then the family retreat invitation arrived, and my name wasn't on it. Not even once. Maybe it's best if you sit this one out, Evelyn wrote. No hard feelings. And I understood some erasures don't come with anger. They come folded, printed, and already decided. I used to think names couldn't be erased once they were printed. The email subject line sounded cheerful, maybe even forced. Merritt Family Retreat, 2025, RSVP by Friday. I clicked on it without expecting anything, which made the absence feel sharper. My name wasn't there. Not in the greeting, not in the guest list, not even misspelled. Evelyn's was first. Of course, hers always is Evelyn Granger, Bradley Granger, Tyler 14, Finn 12. Then Mom Margaret Merritt. Downstairs room requested early check-in. Preferred. I scrolled twice. There were instructions about parking allergies, a shared Google sheet for meal prep. No space for June. Not this time. There was a small photo attached sunset on the same porch swing I helped repaint when I was 17. My elbow might have been in the original version. Not anymore. I stared at the blinking cursor in my inbox. I thought about replying just to ask. But instead I reached for the framed picture on my desk. It's faded now. The edge curls slightly from years of sun. In it I'm maybe 10, gripping Dad's hand with both of mine. We were standing just outside the beach house. I had my socks rolled unevenly. He had his belt crooked. We looked like we belonged nowhere else. The phone buzzed. One message. Evelyn. Hey, June. Maybe it's best if you sit this one out. No hard feelings. It's just easier this way. The screen dimmed before I did. I read the line again. Then once more. Like maybe another read would rearrange the meaning. I opened the drawer and ran my thumb along the bottom edge. The wood caught at a sliver where the varnish chipped last winter. There was a pen inside. The blue one with my initials from college still worked, still mine. Dad once told me while packing books into a moving box, don't let silence become your place. I remember not knowing what he meant. Thought he was talking about libraries or long drives. Now I think he meant rooms like this, quiet, not because they're peaceful, but because no one bothers to call your name anymore. I closed the email without replying, not because I didn't have words, but because sometimes the clearest answer is the one you never send. Some things don't break, they just fold until you stop unfolding them. I mailed the embroidered handkerchief 2 days before their anniversary. Ivory thread, scalloped edge initials, stitched in a shade I thought might match the curtains in the dining room. It came back 6 months later in a plastic bin Evelyn brought to the reunion marked Mom's Extra Stuff. Still wrapped, still sealed. No one mentioned it. I used to send books for Tyler, science kits for Finn. I remembered their favorite colors, the names of their teachers, which one hated tomatoes. The gifts were never wrong, just invisible. 1 year, I flew home for Christmas and landed just as the snow started. Evelyn texted me from inside the house. We're all in the den. Back doors unlocked. Try not to wake the boys. When I walked in, the only seat left was a folding chair near the hallway, half blocked by the coat rack. I brought a bottle of wine that night. Evelyn looked at the label before I handed it over. That's dry right. I think we've already opened something nicer. I watched as Mom opened the floral arrangement I'd ordered for their 40th. She glanced at the card, folded it without reading, and turned to Evelyn. You already picked the lilies. Why would she send more? The vase ended up behind the pantry door, beside a mop and an unopened box of glassware. I never said anything. Not then. Not after. The one time I asked about the estate Mom was rearranging pill organizers at the kitchen table. I handed her a typed note with a few questions, simple, practical. She smiled without looking up. Evelyn's handling all that. You don't need to worry your sweet little head. My name wasn't on the documents, but the ink on my questions stayed on the page. I began flying in late and leaving early. I kept receipts for gifts I no longer wrapped. I spoke less, smiled when prompted, laughed when someone else's story needed an echo. Evelyn called it being gracious. I called it surviving the table without scraping the chair. The handkerchief is still folded in a drawer. I never washed it. The card is still taped to the back blank inside. I used to wonder if she ever opened it when no one was looking. Now I wonder if that possibility was ever mine to hold. Some absences feel louder than presence ever could. I kept the frame empty on purpose, a brass rectangle with beveled edges bought on sale the week I moved into the condo. I told myself I'd fill it with something permanent. It's still blank. Dust gathers where a memory should have lived. Mom posted a photo last summer. The caption read, "Us on the beach." Such joy. I took that photo. I remembered the angle, the way the sun hit the back of Evelyn's hair, just right. I stood 3 feet away barefoot in wet sand, trying to make them all smile at once. Only they made it into the frame. Later that week, a New Year's card arrived in the mail. Glossy. White and gold. The names were printed in looping script. Evelyn, Bradley, Tyler, Finn and Margaret. No comma missing. No room for error. My name was never miswritten. Just never needed. When the regional award came through at work, someone from HR handed me a certificate inside a navy folder. There was a tray of cookies, some polite clapping and a handshake that lasted too long. I forwarded the announcement email to Evelyn mostly out of habit. She replied 6 hours later, "Good for you. Hope it's not too stressful." The folder's still in my filing drawer. 3rd tab. Between tax forms and health records. I haven't looked at it since. One afternoon she called while I was in line for coffee. "Teal or coral for the dinner napkins? What do you think?" I hesitated. "I might not make it this year." She didn't miss a beat. "That's okay. We'll save you a plate." There was no plate, no chair, no mention when I didn't arrive. No text to ask if the flight was delayed or if I changed my mind. When I saw the photos posted later, Evelyn's caption read, "Full house. Full hearts." I closed the app. Back home, the frame on my desk leaned slightly to the left. I reached out once as if to straighten it, then stopped. It didn't matter. A level frame doesn't fill itself. Some things aren't meant to hold anyone. Some stories look neater when one name goes missing. Some erasures don't cross lines. They dissolve them. Rachel forwarded the listing with no subject line. Just the link. A real estate newsletter buried in a roundup of coastal properties. I clicked, half curious. Then I saw it. A familiar porch whitewashed siding the crooked lantern still leaning to the left. Merritt Beach House. Except it wasn't called that anymore. No mention of family, just a 5-digit parcel number and the words "Seller Motivated, LLC Controlled." There was no text, no email, not even a vague heads up. I checked the deed history. The last public record had Dad's name, Harold E. Merritt, typed neatly in block font. The next one listed Granger Coastal Holdings, LLC, dated 9 months after his passing. The signatory Bradley Granger. My name didn't appear once. I pulled the manila folder from the top drawer an old copy of the will Dad kept in a safe long before the others called it outdated. The pages smelled faintly of paper glue and salt. Near the bottom of page 6, a clause in smaller type. In the event of fiduciary lapse or undisclosed transfer, secondary rights shall revert to designated fallback beneficiary June E. Merritt. I circled it with a pencil that no longer had an eraser. Dad once handed me a pale blue shell and told me, "You think in tides, not waves." I didn't know what he meant then. I think he did. I scrolled through the online photos again. The kitchen was staged with lemons in a glass bowl. The bunk room had neutral bedding, not the faded quilt I remember. The porch swing was gone. Someone had written updated coastal elegance. I remembered scraping mildew from those railings the summer before college. Evelyn took pictures from inside air-conditioned. I texted Rachel, "Do you have access to the full transfer file?" Her reply came in under a minute. "Of course. Found a few things. Want to see there was a name missing from every legal page, mine, not a typo. Not an oversight. An edit. Dad once told me while brushing sand off the back of my neck, they may forget. That doesn't mean you disappear. He didn't mean memory. He meant title. I printed every page. No scribbles, no annotations, just clean margins and small deliberate check marks. I slipped them into a folder and closed the drawer. Some inheritances aren't contested. They're just quietly taken while no one watches. Silence doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes it's the only version of clarity that remains. I didn't delete the group thread. I just muted it. The notifications stopped blinking after a day. No one noticed. No one asked if I'd seen the brunch photos, the recipe, swap the new dog Aunt Lorna got for Christmas. I unfollowed Mom's account first. Evelyn's next. I didn't block them. Just enough space so the air could breathe again. The gifts I'd mailed over the years had been returned one way or another, unopened, regifted, forgotten, at the foot of the guest bed. I packed them into a brown paper box, unopened candles, a music box I had engraved for Finn, 2 scarves still folded with tags. The lid didn't quite close. I tied it anyway. The envelope from the attorney arrived with the usual formality, sealed, creased, perfectly. I placed it beside the stack of printed contracts and marked each page with a paperclip. No highlighter. No notes. Just quiet decisions in sequence. Rachel and I met on a private video call. No one else was copied. No legal team. No noise. She wore her glasses, hair tied back. "You're not doing this to fight them." I nodded once. "You're doing this because they hoped you wouldn't." The request to initiate title review went out the same afternoon. Addressed to the registered holding company. No names, no pleasantries. Just language. Direct, neutral, unmistakable. I opened the hallway closet and reached behind in the spare linens. A sleeve caught my hand. The knit was coarser than I remembered. A pine-scented mothball dropped to the floor. I didn't pick it up. The sweater still held its shape, though the cuffs had thinned. He'd started it the winter after his surgery. Never finished the bottom hem, but I wore it anyway that last Thanksgiving before Evelyn asked me to change into something less homespun for pictures. I folded it into my suitcase without checking for stains. No calls, no texts. I didn't tell Mom. I didn't leave Evelyn a voicemail. The folder on my desk stayed closed, not out of fear, just choice. I taped the box of returned gifts shut and left it by the door. No address, no note, just wait. Some exits don't need a doorframe. They happen when the echo stops echoing back. Some spaces feel cleaner without history pinned to the walls. I chose the cottage because it didn't remind me of anything. No chipped teacups from childhood, No rugs that held arguments in their fibers, just white walls and one creaky step near the kitchen. I paid the deposit in cash. The bedroom had a single window facing the dunes. The curtain rod hung crooked like someone had given up halfway. I didn't fix it. I unpacked slowly shirts I hadn't worn in years, a mug with a chipped rim, the sweater that still smelled faintly of pine. In the pocket, I found a folded square of paper. Not new. The creases were soft like it had been opened and closed too many times to count. If they forget, you remember yourself harder. The handwriting leaned left. Dad never used punctuation, just pressure. The woman who handed me the keys wore orthopedic sandals and a windbreaker, so starting fresh, I nodded. She didn't wait for an answer. The next morning I walked the shoreline without direction. The sand was cooler than I expected. A gull dragged a plastic wrapper across the wet stretch. I watched it struggle until the tide pulled it away. I found a broken shell by the rocks. The color was soft, not quite blue. One side jagged. I closed my fingers around it, carried it home without thinking. Rachel sent a message mid-afternoon. Documents filed. You're listed as claimant. Quiet timeline unless they respond. No one had. No calls, no forwarded messages. No accidental did you hear from any corner of the tree. I enrolled in an evening drawing class at the community center. The instructor wore mismatched socks and never commented on anyone's technique. On the first day, we were told to sketch something that wasn't whole. I drew the shell. No one asked where I came from. No one recognized my last name. The sign-in sheet just read, Merritt June, but I hesitated before writing it. Back in the cottage, I leaned the drawing against the window. The room had no photos, no awards, no placeholders for what used to be. Just a chair, a blanket folded the wrong way, and a place to sit without explanation. Some rooms hold only what you bring into them. This one held breath, and that was enough. Some invitations sound like permission slips written too late. The subject line read, Family Photo Planning, Legacy Wall Project. I opened it without flinching. The tone was polite, curated. We're doing a full lineage wall, even those who drifted. Can you be there? Just for the group shot. It would look better. It didn't say, Hi June. It didn't ask how I'd been. The attachments included a color palette for outfits and a sample mock-up of the collage. Evelyn and her family were already centered in the layout, smiling in coordinated denim. I was penciled in as pending. No apology, no context, just the soft implication of usefulness. My presence was now aesthetic. Evelyn's message came 2 hours later. Look, I know things got weird. Just come for the optics. Okay? No punctuation, no name. I stared at the lamp beside my bed, the one I bought second-hand with the chip on the base. The light caught the crack just right. I didn't fix it. I liked that it wasn't trying to be whole. My phone rang once the next day. Mom's number. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was slow, as if she wasn't sure she was calling the right person. You don't have to stay. Just show up. It's not a big ask. Not a big ask. Not a daughter, either, apparently. Just a placeholder. I folded the printed email into quarters and placed it under the shell on my windowsill. The edges curled from the humidity. I didn't press them flat. Rachel's reply came after I forwarded the message. They want the idea of you, not you. I reread that twice. The idea of me, the fill-in, the final piece to make the frame look full. The kettle clicked off in the kitchen. I didn't move. I traced a ring left by a mug I'd forgotten to clean. and thought of the time Evelyn told me not to wear horizontal stripes to family pictures. It throws the balance. I never wore them again. This time I didn't reach for the closet. I didn't check the train schedule. I didn't write back. Not because I was waiting for a better reason, but because sometimes absence is the only honest answer left. Not belonging somewhere doesn't mean you don't belong anywhere. I started shelving returns on Thursdays. Just 2 hours. The local library let me take the morning shift, quiet, unlisted. No name tag. The woman at the front desk called me Miss June once, and I didn't correct her. The books came in mismatched bins, corners, bent, spines cracked. Some had dedications inside the covers, to Rachel for the long summer, from Mom, always proud. I never looked past the first page. Most mornings began the same. Boil water. Pour slowly into the old ceramic mug with the faded mountain print. It leaked heat too fast, but I liked how it left a warm ring on the table. I kept a notebook next to it. Not for schedules, just thoughts. Not lists anymore, just reminders. Take the call only if it adds something. Don't shrink to fit. The email from Aunt Lorna arrived while I was peeling a tangerine. Subject line, updated legacy wall. Almost final. The attachment showed a collage draft. Evelyn's family was in the center. Mom off to one side. I recognized the photo they used for me. It was cropped from someone else's wedding. I replied without opening the image, "Thank you for including me. I won't be attending. Please use a different photo." 2 hours later, Evelyn's voicemail came in. "Are you seriously doing this again? We're offering a chance to come back." Back. As if I'd wandered off without direction. As if absence meant exile, not choice. I pressed delete. Not out of defiance. Just because there was nothing left to hear. That afternoon, I bought a small wooden plaque at a second-hand shop. The surface was scratched, but the hook held. I hung Dad's old shell from it, the one with the soft pink edge and a thumb-sized crack. Underneath I wrote in pen, "I am not lost. I am not gone." At the library, a girl named Nora pointed to the paper star I'd hung above the return bin. "Did your family help you make that?" I answered without pausing. "I made it myself. That still counts." She nodded and kept reading. I went back to restocking the shelves. No one looked for me that day. No one apologized. But for the first time, I didn't leave room at the table, and I didn't feel like I had to explain why. Some endings don't echo. They just stop holding the door open. The envelope didn't weigh much. I used the plain white kind, no logo, no return address. Inside, I folded 2 pieces of paper. One was the signed form declining further participation in the estate review. The other, a note in blue ink. I never asked to be remembered. I just stopped pretending to forget myself. I didn't seal it right away. I sat with it beside me on the kitchen counter, watching the condensation trail down the side of a water glass. The ink bled slightly where I'd pressed too hard on the loop of my name. I left it that way. The name change was finalized 2 days earlier. No ceremony, no witness. Rachel handed me the confirmation folder across a diner table while the waitress refilled our mugs. "You sure you don't want to keep Merritt?" I didn't answer. She flipped the page. "Ellery suits you. Quiet, but unshakable." The clerk at the DMV didn't ask why. She just typed. I signed June Ellery with a hand steadier than I expected. I kept the old license tucked in the back of the wallet, not for nostalgia, just proof that I had once belonged to a name I no longer owed anything to. I logged out of every family thread. Group chats, calendar invites, shared folders labeled reunion planning and mom's needs. I didn't announce it. I just stopped receiving. The scholarship paperwork came in 3 pages long. I read every line. The fund would go to first-generation students pursuing education in public ethics. Dad's idea once mentioned between sips of lukewarm tea. I named it the Harold Ellery Fund. No footnotes, no plaque. Just a line in the Foundation's quarterly newsletter. I bought the suitcase from a man who said it had belonged to his aunt. Leather worn thin at the corners, handle soft from years of use. Inside I packed one notebook, a photo of Dad on the porch with a paperback in his lap, and a note I'd written months ago. Memory doesn't have to be shared to be valid. No one asked where I was going. No one had to. The letter fit neatly in the mailbox slot outside the house they once called ours. I didn't look back. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't matter where they stood once I'd learned to stand elsewhere. Some mornings don't begin. They simply continue like breath. The steam curled softly above the clay teapot, not in a rush, not in a pattern. I poured slowly the glaze on the rim, chipped in one corner, familiar now. The cup warmed my palms unevenly. I liked it that way. No new messages, no red circles blinking, no forwarded links or calendar invites. The silence wasn't empty. It was measured. I opened the small notebook beside the sink. The paper had softened with use. On the top of the page I wrote in pencil day 100 of not explaining. The board by the wall still held the shell. Beneath it, a new slip of paper rested between the tacks. I hadn't shown it to anyone. I didn't leave. I just stopped knocking. I reached into the drawer and placed the old photo of Dad into its envelope. His smile didn't press on me anymore. It simply existed like wallpaper you forget is beautiful until the light hits it a certain way. I closed the flap without sealing it. Outside, the soil was damp enough for the mint to hold shape. I carried the tin watering can, one handle slightly loose, and leaned over the row. The scent rose before the water touched it. Something between coolness and memory. Nora passed by on her scooter, pink handlebar tassels fluttering like ribbon. "Miss June, your flowers smell like candy." I didn't correct her. "They smell like remembering." She waved with both hands and didn't slow down. I didn't need her to. I stayed on the porch for a moment longer. The ocean was calm, more rhythm than sound. No crashing waves, no declarations, just breath in water. I used to listen for my mother's voice or Evelyn's shoes on the stairs, trying to guess which version of myself I was supposed to become before opening the door. Not anymore. The voice I heard now was quieter. Still mine. You stayed. You didn't have to prove anything. You just lived. I didn't answer out loud. I didn't need to. Some endings don't need closure. Some names don't need correction. Some lives, when lived quietly enough, stop waiting for a seat and start becoming the table itself.